My name is Luca. I have always felt that there was more to life than the everyday hustle, a hidden realm brimming with mysteries that only those who dare to look beyond appearances can experience. For as long as I can remember, an inner voice whispered that my destiny was intertwined with secrets far deeper than those that most people chose to ignore. Even in my childhood, while others were content with playground adventures, I found solace in quiet moments where my mind wandered to questions about existence, purpose, and the very nature of the soul. I remember one clear, fateful day that altered the course of my life. It was a day etched in my memory not for its ordinary events, but for the extraordinary encounter I had with the edge of mortality. I was driving home on a rainy afternoon when a sudden accident sent my senses into a rapid, spiraling dance of confusion and fear. In the chaos of screeching tires and shattered glass, time seemed to slow to a crawl. In that suspended, otherworldly moment, I was pulled into a state of complete disorientation where the boundaries between wakefulness and a dreamlike slumber seemed to vanish. It was as if I had momentarily stepped outside the confines of my own body, adrift in a vast sea of light and warmth. In that eerie realm on the brink of death, I encountered sensations I had never known. The familiar world was replaced by a luminous haze where vibrant colors merged seamlessly with soft, echoing sounds. There was no pain, only a serene, profound calm that enveloped me like a long-forgotten embrace. I sensed the presence of an indefinable force, as though I was immersed in an ocean of profound love and understanding that transcended language, culture, or even the concept of time. It was during these moments that I received a message, so gentle yet so soul-stirring, that hinted at a hidden truth, that every moment of our lives is part of a grand tapestry woven by a divine hand, and that even in the face of death, there exists a promise of renewal. When I came to, the world seemed both startlingly familiar and irrevocably changed. That near-death experience became a turning point in my life. I began to see the subtlest beauty in everyday encounters, a smile exchanged with a stranger, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the quiet resilience of the human spirit in times of adversity. I came to understand that life was not meant to be taken for granted, for within its fleeting moments lay clues to a greater mystery. The memory of that luminous realm was permanently etched in my heart, guiding every decision and every quest for understanding thereafter. In the days that followed, I often found myself seeking solace in solitude, trying to piece together the meaning behind what had occurred. I'd sit quietly by a window, watching the interplay of light and shadow, and allow my thoughts to wander towards the mysteries that now seemed both unreachable and yet intimately familiar. I read widely on ancient philosophies and mystical beliefs, searching for explanations and confrontations of the imperishable light I had witnessed. Every book, every story, every whispered legend began to point to one undeniable truth, that life is but a cycle of endings and beginnings, and that each tragic or miraculous moment carries the seed of rebirth. But amidst the introspection, life continued its inexorable march. The memory of my near-death experience was both a blessing and a burden, a constant reminder to live with intention and to cherish every heartbeat. It became the catalyst for my journey towards becoming someone who not only survived but thrived on the boundless possibilities of existence. I started volunteering, sharing my experience with those who felt lost in despair, and finding in each conversation a renewed sense of connection to the world. I learned to listen to the silent rhythms of the universe, to trust that even when I couldn't understand the present, the future held promises I had yet to uncover. Every so often, when the evening settled in and the stars began to twinkle like scattered jewels across the velvet sky, I would recall that day of transformation. I felt an ever-deepening gratitude for the second chance at life, a reminder that miracles are not confined to extraordinary events but can also be found in the daily acts of kindness and the quiet reflections in solitude. I began to view every challenge as an invitation to dive deeper, to embrace the lessons hidden within the folds of hardship, and to honor my fate with courage and compassion. Now, as I stand on the precipice of a new chapter, I realize that my journey has just begun. The experience of nearly crossing over has instilled in me a resolute faith in the unseen forces that guide our lives. I now walk with a sense of purpose that transcends the mundane, forever altered by the luminous gift I once experienced. In sharing my story, I hope to inspire others to seek the extraordinary in the ordinary, to listen for the quiet whispers of their own inner truths, and to trust that even in the darkest moments, a glorious light is waiting to be rediscovered. Thus, my name is, and I am no longer the same man who once ambled through life with quiet resignation. I have been transformed by the divine interplay of fate and wonder, and every new day is a canvas upon which I dare to paint bold strokes of hope, courage, and infinite possibility. I remember that fateful day as if it were engraved into my very soul, a day when the ordinary world abruptly shattered and revealed a glimpse of something far more profound. It began on a gloomy afternoon when dark clouds loomed overhead and rain traced delicate patterns against the windshield of my car. I was driving along a quiet road, lost in my thoughts about the mundanity of everyday life, when a series of events unfolded that I could never have predicted. In one single shattering moment, everything changed. A reckless driver appeared out of nowhere, swerving through the rain as if oblivious to the swirling storm. The collision was violent and sudden, a cacophony of screeching tires, shattering glass, and a jolt that seemed to suspend time itself. In that moment of chaos, my body was thrust into a state of disarray. I felt an overwhelming sense of dislocation, as if my physical form was being unhinged from the threads of reality. For what seemed like an eternity, I floated in a space where time was no longer linear. The sensations I experienced defied explanation. There was an astonishing clarity amidst the confusion, a serene awareness that transcended physical pain and fear. I found myself separated from my body, as if I were observing the carnage from a safe distance. The horrible sounds of the accident faded into a soft hum. A lullaby beckoned me into a realm of profound stillness. As I drifted in this detached state, a warm golden light began to envelope me. It wasn't just a visual spectacle, but an all-encompassing sensation of unconditional love and acceptance. I felt as if I were suspended in a boundless ocean of luminosity, each ripple of light whispering secrets of the universe. In that otherworldly glow, memories of my entire life, both joyous and sorrowful, unfolded with surprising clarity. It was not judgment that accompanied these recollections, but rather a gentle, almost maternal acceptance of every moment that had led me to that point. Within this luminous cocoon, I encountered a presence that seemed to radiate wisdom and compassion beyond measure. This presence did not communicate with words, but with emotions and images, a silent dialogue so powerful that it filled my very being with a sense of peace I had never known. I sensed that this force was trying to impart an urgent message, that life, in its endless cycle of beginnings and endings, is not a series of random coincidences, but a carefully orchestrated symphony of interwoven destinies. Every moment, no matter how fleeting, carried the potential for renewal and transformation. I remember feeling both awed and humbled by this encounter. There was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force, that urged me to surrender all my fears and accept the mystery of existence. In those final moments before consciousness returned to me, the boundaries between the physical and the ethereal had dissolved completely. I was no longer confined to the limitations of my intellect or the weight of my mortal body. Instead, I was part of something infinitely larger, a continuum of vibrant energies, ancient yet ever renewing. In the midst of this surreal encounter, there was a peculiar sensation of both loss and gain. The ending specter of death, which many might find terrifying, was transformed in that moment into a doorway to deeper understanding. I felt that my near-death experience was not an end, but a critical threshold, a transition from one state of being to another, more expansive one. The idea of death, with all its finality and dread, melted away into the realization that every ending heralds a new beginning. This cosmic truth pulsed at the very core of my newfound perception. When I finally began to regain awareness, I was gently drawn back into my physical form. The world I returned to was the same world that had been momentarily suspended, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. The pain of the collision was present, but it paled in comparison to the awe-inspiring clarity I had discovered in the other realm. I was left with a profound sense of gratitude. The miracle of my survival, paired with the extraordinary insights I had received, became an eternal beacon of hope. Every time a memory of that radiant light flitted across my mind, I was reminded that life is far richer and more mysterious than the mundane struggles of daily routine. In the days that followed, I spent countless hours in solitude, trying to piece together the fragments of what I had experienced. At first, my thoughts were filled with questions and doubts. What did that light truly signify? Was it a glimpse into the afterlife, or merely a projection of my dying brain? However, these questions gave way to a resolute understanding. I realized that my experience was a deeply personal encounter with the fundamental nature of existence, a reminder that every moment is imbued with potential, and that the boundaries between life and death are far more porous than we dare to imagine. This period of introspection was marked by a persistent, gentle inner voice that urged me to live my life with renewed passion and purpose. I began to see that my narrow focus on the trivialities of everyday events had overshadowed the larger, more beautiful truth of our shared journey. Every sunrise became a symbol of triumph, every shared smile with a stranger a reaffirmation of the universal bond that ties us together. I dedicated myself to embracing each moment fully, convinced that even in vulnerability there is strength, and in the shadows of despair a hidden light that can guide us through. The lingering effects of that day sharpened my senses for years to come. I began noticing the subtle interplay of light and shadow in everyday life, the quiet eloquence of nature, and the transformative power of human emotion. Each of these sensory details reinforced the lesson of my near-death experience, that life is an intricate dance between the known and the unknown, the seen and the unseen. In surrendering to the mystery, I discovered a freedom that many spend their entire lives searching for. I learned to trust in the serendipitous unfolding of destiny, and I no longer feared the inevitable cycles of loss and renewal. Look now, the near-death experience remains one of the most transformative events of my life. It was not merely the brush with mortality that altered my course, but the profound awareness it awakened within me, an appreciation for the delicate balance between fragility and strength, between departure and homecoming. It taught me that even when faced with the imminent end, there is a promise of rebirth, a guarantee that the spirit endures beyond the temporary constraints of physical existence. This revelation has since colored every aspect of my life, inspiring me to walk a path of compassion, courage, and unwavering hope. Today, as I continue to navigate the labyrinth of life, I carry with me the vivid memories of that transcendent journey. It serves as an eternal reminder that each heartbeat is an invitation to explore the deeper truths of our existence. The near-death experience was not a moment of despair, but a cornerstone of my awakening, a catalyst that propelled me towards a life filled with purpose and wonder. And while I may never fully articulate the ineffable details of what I witnessed, I know that I have been forever changed by the light that once enveloped me in the darkest of hours. In this ever-changing tapestry of life, I have come to understand that such moments are rare gifts. They beckon us to look beyond our everyday struggles, to search for the beauty and meaning hidden in the spaces between breaths, and to embrace the unknown with open arms. The memory of that luminous threshold continues to inspire my journey, urging me to live with an unyielding determination to honor the miracle that was and the promise that lies ahead. Thus, my near-death experience remains an integral chapter of my life, a chapter that not only redefined my understanding of mortality, but also illuminated the possibility of eternal rebirth and the endless dance of hope in the face of inevitable change. In the days following that surreal near-death journey, a subtle transformation began to take root within me. It was as if the boundaries between my waking self and an unseen, eternal source had blurred, permitting whispers of something far deep into my everyday consciousness. I soon discovered that the luminous experience was not an isolated moment of terror or wonder, but rather the prelude to a divine message, a call to awaken to a deeper purpose in life. I remember the hours after the incident as a series of moments suspended in quiet reflection. When I closed my eyes to rest, the echoes of that transcendent world returned, a glow of golden light that bathed every warmth and truth. In that ethereal space, a silent dialogue began, a communion without words where feelings and images communicated in a language older than time. I felt invited into a vast garden of inner wisdom, where each blossoming thought promised a fragment of insight about my existence and destiny. The message, as it gradually unfurled in my heart, was one of unconditional love, acceptance, and renewal. I realized that every sorrow I had ever experienced, every joy I had ever celebrated, and even the mundane details of everyday life had been meticulously woven into a grand tapestry of perpetual transformation. There was subtle reassurance that nothing in life is wasted, and that every encounter, whether steeped in triumph or heartbreak, carries with it the seed of rebirth. This revelation transcended the fear of mortality that once haunted me. Instead, it awakened in me a buoyant faith in the ceaseless, beautiful cycle of life. It began one crisp, quiet evening as I sat alone in my small study. The weight of this, the lingering memories of that fateful day and the maddening questions it had ignited, suddenly gave way to a remarkable clarity. Amidst the stillness, I heard an inner murmur that was gentle and all-encompassing, like a soft echo from a far-off valley. In that moment, the divine message crystallized in my mind. Embrace each moment as a sacred gift, for within every breath lies the power to transform not only yourself but the world around you. The words were not spoken aloud, but they resonated like a sacred mantra, stirring dormant parts of my soul. I began to realize that the message was urging me to see beyond the surface of everyday events, to discover the profound truth hidden within the interplay of light and shadow, presence and absence, joy and sorrow. It was a call to live with heightened awareness, to regard every encounter as an opportunity to connect with the divine essence that dances beneath our human forms. Each fleeting moment, when observed with an open heart, revealed its tiny miracles, the delicate unfolding of a flower, the laughter of a child echoing in a crowded park, the tired yet luminous smile of a stranger on a long bus ride. These were not random occurrences, but signs, subtle reminders that life itself is a continuous sacred process of creation and dissolution. As these realizations deepened, I found my perception shifting in remarkable ways. The mundane tasks that felt burdensome now sparkled with new significance. Washing the dishes, tending to a small garden, or simply sitting in silence became a ritual of communion, a way to honor the unseen interplay of energies and emotions that animate our daily lives. My inner world, once clouded by doubt and fear, was gradually illuminated by a calm certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. The divine message had given me a sense of purpose that permeated every fiber of my being. Over time, I began to understand that this message was not meant solely for me. It was a universal truth, a beacon meant to guide each of us back to our own inner light. The pain that accompanies loss and suffering, I realized, is the dark soil in which resilience and hope take root. Every setback is an invitation to rise anew. Every tear is a promise of future joy. In this light, the fragility of human existence transforms into a powerful reminder of our capacity to rebuild and renew ourselves despite the odds. The message taught me that the heart, when it embraces life in its totality, is a boundless reservoir of courage and compassion that can withstand even the fiercest storms. With each passing day, I began to integrate this divine calling into every aspect of my life. I started small, making conscious choices to seek beauty in everyday details, choosing kindness over indifference, mindfulness over haste, and gratitude over complaint. The more I aligned my actions with the inner truth revealed in those moments of luminous clarity, the more I felt the gentle pull of the divine guiding me forward. It was as if every deliberate act of love and understanding created ripples that reverberated far beyond my own existence, lives of others in ways I could scarcely imagine. One afternoon, while wandering in a peaceful park, I encountered an elderly man seated quietly on a weathered bench. His eyes sparkled with a wisdom that mirrored my own newfound insights, and in a spontaneous gesture of connection, we struck up a conversation. As we spoke, it became clear that his life, though marked by hardship, had been equally transformed by an inner awakening. He too had heard the call, a call that encouraged him to look at his struggles as stepping stones toward a higher purpose. In sharing our stories, our voices merged in a tapestry of shared recognition that we are all travelers on an endless journey toward understanding, each seeking validation that our lives matter in the grand scheme of existence. This encounter crystallized the lesson of the divine message for me. I gradually realized that the essence of life is not measured by the milestones of success or failure, but by the quality of our inner revolutions, silent transformations that shape our hearts when we dare to confront the mysteries of our own souls. The divine message, in all its radiant simplicity, was an invitation to reclaim our inherent power, to trust that within each of us lies an eternal spark capable of igniting the darkest night and lighting the way for others. In the stillness of my quiet moments, I often return to that inner voice, a soft, persistent reminder that life is a divine orchestration of meanings and miracles. I have learned to listen intently, to let each word of that silent speech vibrate within me until it weaves itself into the fabric of my actions. The divine message is not a secret reserved for a chosen few, but a universal truth that is accessible to anyone with the courage to seek it. And so, I carry it with me every day, like a compass that steers my wandering heart toward hope, resilience, and the unyielding promise of renewal. Thus, as I continue along this wondrous path, I am guided by the firm understanding that each moment has potential for transformation. The divine message reaches out to all who are willing to listen, a reminder that in embracing life's myriad challenges, we unlock the door to an inner sanctuary of love, wisdom, and boundless possibility. In sharing this message, I hope to illuminate the way for those still caught in the shadows of doubt, offering a glimpse of the profound beauty that awaits when we dare to live in the light of our truest selves. And so the sacred truth resonates, every heartbeat an ending and a beginning, every breath a chance to rise anew, and every moment a divine gift, urging us to step into the fullness of our humanity with open arms and an unburdened heart. The morning of May 8, 2025, arrived with an almost palpable air of expectation. For hours before dawn, the city around Vatican City was already abuzz with a collective anticipation that defied sleep. In the cool pre-dawn light, Luca found himself waking with a quiet urgency, a stirring deep within that resonated with the memory of his own near-death awakening. Every fiber of his being knew that today was not merely another day, it was a profound turning point in the tapestry of destiny. First rays began to illuminate the ancient cobblestones leading to the heart of the Vatican, Luca stepped outside into a world transformed by both the chill of early spring and the warm promise of a new beginning. The streets were dotted with pilgrims and curious onlookers alike, all making their pilgrimage to St. Peter's Square. The air vibrated with murmurs of hope, prayers, and an almost tangible electricity, a sensation that foreshadowed the momentous events to come. Luca made his way through the labyrinth of narrow streets, each step echoing the inner rhythm of his heartbeat. He recalled the luminous messages that had been etched into his soul through previous experiences, messages that urged him to seek and embrace every spark of divine possibility. Today, that spark seemed to stand at the threshold of history. The venerable walls of the Vatican, steeped in centuries of tradition and mystery, beckoned him onward like an invitation from a long-lost friend. Upon arriving at St. Peter, Luca was immediately enveloped by the sea of humanity assembled in reverence. The sheer scale of the gathering was awe-inspiring. Faces of every age and background, all united by a singular purpose, to witness a defining moment in the annals of faith and hope. The radiant light of the breaking dawn cast a golden hue over the thousands of souls, blending their hopes and fears into a single, unstoppable tide of emotion. For Luca, the scene was not simply a public display of ritual, it was an intimate communion among kindred spirits, each driven by the belief that miracles continue to blossom in even the most ordinary moments. As the minutes stretched into an eternity, the atmosphere in the square grew even more electric. The murmurs of anticipation escalated into a collective heartbeat that resonated with profound truth. Every whisper of the wind, every flutter of birds' wings against the vast sky seemed to carry the promise of renewal. Luca's inner voice, once nurtured in solitude after his near-death experience, now rose in a quiet crescendo of expectation. It reminded him that life itself is a cycle of transformation, where every end brings the seed of a new beginning. In the orchestrated chaos of reverence and excitement, Luca's thoughts drifted back to the sacred moments of introspection that had transformed him. He remembered the still whispers of the divine message that had urged him to awaken to life's interconnected beauty. Today, with his heart standing open before the grandeur of the moment, he felt the same tender surge of love and longing. It was a call to recognize that in every fleeting second, there exists a possibility to redefine ourselves, a possibility that was now gathering on the Mount of Faith. The focal point of the day's ritual would come with a symbolic release, a ritual as old as the conclave itself, where the color of the rising smoke would announce the birth of a new spiritual leader. Around Luca, the congregation's eyes were fixed upward, each person holding their breath as if the heavens themselves were about to deliver a decree of divine purpose. The anticipation escalated with each passing minute, and even the normally austere Vatican walls seemed to shimmer with the promise of celestial intervention. Luca found himself transfixed by the whispers of the crowd and the steady hum of collective prayer. He mused the idea that today the divine was speaking not through the fire or the light, but through the hearts of those gathered, a myriad of souls each contributing their own hope to the greater whole. In that moment, the human and the divine intertwined, and Luca felt as though his inner light, kindled long ago by his own brush with death, was now resonating in harmony with the energies of every person around him. The signal finally arrived as the grand doors of the Sistine Chapel, visible from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, opened to the world. Luca's pulse quickened as a dense, warm plume of smoke began to spool upwards into the heavens. Unlike past moments of gloom that might have heralded tragedy, today the smoke was white, a brilliant, luminous herald of renewal and hope. The sight was breathtaking. It lifted the spirits of every onlooker, weaving a tangible thread of unity among shouts of joy and relieved laughter. In that sublime instant, Luca felt a profound reconnection with the divine message etched into his memory. He remembered his own transformation and realized that the white smoke was not just a symbol of a papal election. It was the visible manifestation of an age-old promise that even in the darkest moments, light always finds a way to emerge. Tears, unbidden yet welcome, welled in his eyes. They were tears for the unspoken stories of pain and redemption, for the dreams that had been rekindled in hearts young and old alike. For hours following the smoke's ascent, the square thrummed with renewed energy. The election of the new pope was a deeply intricate ritual, laden with symbolism and historical weight. Luca observed every gesture, every nod of understanding among the faithful, as if the intricate dance of tradition and modernity were playing out before him like a sacred opera. In those hours, time itself seemed to pause, allowing the collective spirit of humanity to be reborn through the simple act of hope. With every passing moment, Luca's inner resolve strengthened. He was more determined than ever to embrace this new chapter with an open heart and a willingness to celebrate the miracles inherent in life. As the day unfolded, the explanations of ancient rituals intermingled with personal stories of overcoming adversity, creating a mosaic of human experience and divine promise. In quiet conversations with strangers turned companions, Luca found echoes of his own journey, the near-death experience, the subsequent introspection, and now the joyous celebration of renewal. Every shared smile and every nod of mutual understanding was a silent acknowledgement that even in a world full of uncertainty, hope persists. That day was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a living reminder that every ending is a doorway to something infinitely more beautiful. By the time it had reached its zenith and the square basked in the full glow of daylight, Luca's heart felt irrevocably altered. The decisive day had not only crowned a new spiritual leader, but it had also crowned the potential for rebirth within each soul present. As he slowly walked away from the square later that day, the profound echoes of that morning, the golden light, the stirring prayers, the symbolic white smoke, clung to him like a cherished secret. They reminded him that life is an endless series of miraculous moments, all waiting to unfold if only we dare to believe. In the quiet solitude that followed the jubilant clamor, Luca sat on a small stone bench along a secluded corner of the Vatican gardens. There, in a brief respite from the lingering exhilaration, he allowed the day's events to settle within him. The overwhelming experience of witnessing the old giving way to the new reminded him that every soul, every heartbeat, is part of a grand cosmic narrative, a mutual story of struggles and triumphs, losses and redemptions. In this sacred pause, Luca felt both infinitesimally small and immeasurably significant, a duality that only deepened his reverence for the human spirit. Thus, May 2025 became forever ingrained in Luca's memory as the day when time and destiny converged. It was a day when the ancient rites of the Church and the raw, unfiltered hope of humanity joined in perfect harmony. A day that underscored the divine truth that transformation is not an abstract concept, but a living, breathing reality reflected in every heart that dares to hope. With every step away from that historic square, Luca carried the echoes of that day with him, a beacon of light in moments of darkness, a reminder of the perpetual dance of endings and beginnings. He knew that in the grand scheme of existence, each decisive moment, however fleeting, plants the seed of an eternal journey toward renewal, unity, and boundless love. The dawn after the decisive day brought with it a serene promise, a whisper of transformation that resonated in every cobblestone and ancient archway of Rome. In the tender hours before sunrise, I found myself compelled by an inner voice that had grown from the echoes of past revelations. The celestial light of that morning seemed to speak directly to my soul, urging me to continue my journey, not only toward the physical heart of faith, the Vatican, but also deep into the recesses of my own spirit. I left the bustling core of St. Peter's Square behind that day, my heart still brimming with the images of white smoke and jubilant voices. With the memory of the sacred ritual etched in my mind, I wandered through the quiet streets of Rome, each step a meditation, each moment an invitation to delve deeper into the layers of meaning that had emerged in the wake of my near-death experience. The air was crisp, carrying a hint of incense and ancient stone, reminiscent of secrets spoken long ago in hushed tones by those who had walked this path before me. The city itself became a silent companion as the early looked over the horizon. I strolled along narrow alleyways lined with weathered murals and time-worn inscriptions. In each doorway and every faded fresco, I sensed a call to remember that life is not defined solely by the passage of time or the moments of mortal pain, but by the timeless cadence of hope, rebirth, and renewal. Every step I took was charged with an inner energy, a fervent desire to connect with the divine spark that had first ignited within me on that transformational day. As I moved closer to the Vatican, the cityscape began to change. The modern rhythms of urban life gave way to a palpable sense of sanctity. The grand basilicas and historic monuments stood in silent testimony to centuries of prayer and perseverance. I recalled the divine message that had been so explicitly revealed to me during the stillness of my near-death experience. To see beyond the mundane and recognize that every crevice of our existence holds the possibility of profound wonder. As if in response, the soft light of morning lent an ethereal glow to the ancient stones of the city, inviting me to revere each moment as sacred. During my journey, I encountered a myriad of fellow travelers on their own quests for meaning. An elderly priest, his face lined with the wisdom of many years, paused to exchange a few gentle words with me on a quiet street corner. His eyes, deep and knowing, sparkled with the light of understanding that only comes from a lifelong devotion to the mysteries of existence. "Every step you take carries the promise of grace," he murmured, his voice resonating like a long-forgotten hymn. In that brief encounter, I felt the reassuring presence of a collective spirit, a tradition of seekers who, like me, believed that the physical journey toward the Vatican was inextricably linked to an inner pilgrimage of the soul. The more I began to appreciate the subtleties that stitched together the fabric of Rome. I saw reflections of divinity in the laughter of children playing in a sunlit piazza, in the careful gestures of street vendors setting out fresh bouquets of wildflowers, and even in the quiet solitude of ancient statues that lined the pathways. Each of these seemingly ordinary details became, in my eyes, a shimmering thread in the tapestry of life, a testament to the idea that every living moment was an opportunity to embrace beauty and truth. As I neared the precincts of the Vatican, I paused at a small, ivy-draped archway tucked away in a quiet side street. There I took a moment to close my eyes and breathe deeply, calling to mind the divine message that had altered my understanding of life. In that stillness, vivid memories of my near-death experience and the spectral dialogue with that luminous presence bubbled up in a cascade of emotion. I recalled the warmth, the unconditional love, and the gentle urging to see life as a continuum of endless beginnings. It was as if the archway itself were a portal to another realm, a threshold between the everyday and the eternal. Reinvigorated by these reflections, my steps resumed with a newfound lightness and determination. Ancient gates of the Vatican, I felt as though I had entered not a graphic location, but a sacred sanctuary where time and space converged. Every stone in the myriad courtyards, every fresco adorning the vaulted ceilings of the chapels, seemed to sing the same song of redemption that had first startled my heart. Here, in the hallowed silence of the holy city, I sensed a powerful energy, a magnetic pull that connected each visitor to a lineage of faith that spanned generations. In corridors, I wandered slowly, allowing the majesty of the surroundings to invite me into deeper meditation. The rhythmic footfalls of fellow pilgrims provided a gentle cadence, a reminder that I was but one voice in a grand chorus of seekers and believers. I paused often to look up at the intricate mosaics and ancient carvings that depicted stories of loss, hope, and miraculous deliverance. In those images, I found intricate parallels to my own journey. Like the figures immortalized in stone and pigment, I too had braved the chasms of despair only to emerge with a deeper understanding of life's sacred mysteries. In one quiet chapel, for what seemed like hours on an old stone bench, I closed my eyes, and the words of the divine message echoed through the recesses of my mind. Embrace each moment as a sacred gift, for within every heartbeat lies the power to transform. This mantra, once a distant murmur during my most difficult moments, now had a clear and resonant place in my inner narrative. With each inhale, I felt a gentle surge of energy that reminded me of the luminous presence I had encountered years ago. With each exhale, I released the burdens of pain and doubt, surrendering to the undeniable promise of renewal. Vatican was not a solitary path, but a convergence of countless personal pilgrimages. In quiet conversation with a young seminarian, I learned of his own doubts and the quiet determination with which he embraced the responsibilities of his nascent faith. In sharing our stories, we recognized that our paths, while uniquely our own, were woven into the same grand design, a design that transcended individual struggle and celebrated the interconnectedness of all lives. Walking past a tranquil garden behind a centuries-old convent, I reflected the physical beauty that surrounded me paralleled the inner transformation I had experienced. The garden, with its meticulously trimmed hedges, blooming roses, and trickling fountains, was a living metaphor for the spiritual cultivation that every human heart is capable of achieving. Here, nature and nurture intertwined to create a sanctuary where the soul could blossom and find solace. I felt that the very essence of life, a complex interplay of joy, sorrow, and hope, was mirrored in these natural rhythms. Each petal, each leaf, whispered to me of impermanence and rebirth, reinforcing the divine promise that every ending makes way for a new beginning. As the day unfolded, the luminance of the Vatican seemed to its sacred energy almost palpable. I joined a small group of pilgrims in a quiet moment of collective prayer beneath a towering archway. In that shared silence, every heart present spoke a silent language of longing and gratitude. It was a moment that transcended words, a communion of souls bound together by a search for meaning in the midst of a transient world. I felt the weight and grace of a timeless truth, that our individual journeys, however tumultuous, are threads in a larger tapestry, each necessary to the unfolding of a divine narrative. After the interlude, I continued my exploration with eyes and heart wide open. I wandered into a secluded cloister within the Vatican's expansive grounds, where the air was heavy with the aroma of ancient texts and polished marble. In this stillness, I sensed the convergence of intellectual curiosity and spiritual longing, a reminder that the quest for knowledge and the pursuit of enlightenment are not mutually exclusive, but rather integral aspects of the same journey. Here, contemplative minds had meditated on the mysteries of existence for centuries, and in their silent vigil, I felt a profound kinship with all who had walked this path before me. In the midst of these reflections, I encountered an unexpected moment of serendipity. A soft murmur from a nearby doorway drew my attention to a small, unassuming room filled with relics and handwritten manuscripts. The room, dimly lit by a single flickering candle, exuded an aura of mystery and reverence. Drawn by an almost magnetic force, I stepped inside and spent what felt like an eternity poring over ancient texts that spoke of spiritual renewal, divine encounters, and the eternal cycle of life and death. Each passage, inscribed in the careful hand of a long-departed scribe, was a reminder of the timeless wisdom that continues to guide us, even in the most uncertain moments. I left that room with a heart more attuned to the whispers of history and a spirit emboldened by the certainty that the divine message is eternal and universal. As the afternoon waned, I courtyard, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. Surrounded by centuries of sacred history, I sat beneath an ancient olive tree, its gnarled branches reaching skyward as if in silent supplication. In this peaceful haven, I allowed my thoughts to drift freely between the tangible beauty of the present and the ineffable mystery of the unknown. The olive tree, a symbol of peace and endurance, seemed to embody the very essence of the spiritual journey I had embarked upon, a journey that was both deeply personal and profoundly connected to the pulses of history and faith. I finally recognized that the physical journey to the Vatican was inseparable from the inner odyssey of healing and transformation. Every step I had taken, from the unassuming alleyways of Rome to the hallowed halls of the Holy City, had been a part of my gradual awakening to life's deeper truths. I understood that the ancient stones, the sacred relics, and even the subtle stirrings of a gentle breeze all played their part in a divine symphony, a symphony that transcends time, space, and the ephemeral nature of our mortal existence. By nightfall, as the hushed murmur gave way to the serene cadence of prayer and reflection, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and renewal. My journey had not only brought me to a historic and spiritual epicenter, but had also led me into a deeper communion with my own soul. The spiritual journey had become a pilgrimage, a voyage in which every step, every encounter, and every moment of contemplation was a testament to the enduring promise of rebirth and hope. Emerging from the maze of ancient corridors and sacred chapels, I carried with me not merely memories of awe-inspiring monuments, but the living flame of spiritual discovery. I understood, with a clarity born of both suffering and enlightenment, that the roads we travel, whether paved with stone or illuminated by inner light, are conduits to a larger purpose. The Vatican, in all its hallowed grandeur, was but one stage in the unfolding epic of the human spirit, a reminder that the quest for meaning is eternal and ever-renewing. As I took my leave of that blessed sanctuary, I felt an overwhelming conviction that my journey was far from over. The echoes of sacred chants, the murmur of ancient prayers, and the silent dialogue of the divine resonated within me as I stepped back into the twilight of the Roman night. With an open heart and a spirit rekindled, I embraced the unknown with the certainty that every horizon hides its own promise of a new beginning. My pilgrimage to the Vatican had reaffirmed what I had come to truly understand, that every step we take into the sacred mystery of life is both a gift and a responsibility, a chance to honor the eternal pulse of hope that unites us across time and space. And so, under the vast canopy of a starlit sky, I embarked upon the next leg of my journey, buoyed by the clarity and conviction that had been nurtured within the ancient embrace of the Holy City. Every memory, every experience that had brought me to this juncture coalesced into a single unyielding truth, that the spiritual journey, an ever-unfolding cascade of renewal, and that the divine light, once ignited within our hearts, never truly fades away. On that fateful destiny unfurled before our very eyes, the portrait of rebirth was painted in a single remarkable moment, the ascent of white smoke into the heavens. Amidst the anticipation and fervor that had gathered over countless hours, I found myself staring upward, heart pounding in unison with the collective prayer of all present. The white smoke, a luminous plume rising steadily into the clear sky, was not merely a sign of a new chapter in the Church, as long-storied history. It was a symbol of hope, cleansing, and the promise of renewal that extended far beyond the ritual itself. Folded slowly, as if time wished to savor every second of this sacred revelation. The calm moderated by the voices of thousands was suddenly interlaced with a silence that spoke volumes. In that silence, my thoughts drifted to my own transformative journey, from the near-death experience that had altered the very fabric of my existence to the myriad moments of introspection and revelation that followed. For many, white smoke was merely an emblem, but for me, it represented the culmination of the divine message that had been whispering its secrets for so long that every ending gives way to a new beginning. I recalled the early hours when I first stepped into the vibrant chaos of St. Peter's Square. There, we all were bound together by a shared yearning for renewal, our faces lit not only by the brilliant rays of dawn, but also by the inherent desire to believe in miracles. As the smoke curled upward, I could almost see it intertwining with the light inside me, a radiant reflection of the inner metamorphosis I had experienced. With every inch it ascended, the white smoke carried away remnants of old fears and sorrows, leaving in its wake a fresh promise of hope. In that moment, the symbolism was so overwhelming that even the most skeptical among us could not help but feel a stirring in their hearts. Surrounded by an ocean of faces, each one etched with its own story of struggle and redemption, I listened to the ambient murmur of awe and gratitude. Every whispered prayer, every tear silently shed, was a testament to the power of this ritual. To many, the white smoke evoked the idea of a spiritual cleansing, as though the past, with all its trials and tribulations, was being exhaled into the boundless sky. I could sense that, for numerous souls, this was more than a tradition. It was a compelling invitation to wipe clean the slate of one's inner self and to prepare for a future bathed in light. Captivated, as the stoic grandeur of the Vatican served as a timeless backdrop to this fleeting yet eternal spectacle, the venerable walls, steeped in centuries of witness to miracles and mysteries, seemed to glow more radiantly in response to the white smoke, a celestial bridge spanning the gap between human frailty and divine grace. I found myself drawn into a quiet reverie, contemplating the deep connection between such symbols and the collective human experience. The white smoke was not just a political or ritualistic pronouncement. It was, in its essence, a mirror reflecting the inexorable cycle of life, death, and rebirth, a reminder that every soul, no matter how wounded, possesses the latent capacity for renewal. In that charged atmosphere, I was reminded of legends and ancient stories that spoke of purifying flames, of phoenixes that rose from the ashes of their former selves, and of seasons that inevitably turned from harsh winter to hopeful spring. These age-old narratives carried a resonance that transcended time and culture. They spoke directly to the human spirit's indomitable will to survive and transform. The white smoke, now a beacon in the sky, carried a similar message, a poetic decree that from the depths of despair arises the power to begin anew. Its ethereal curl, delicate yet determined, intertwined with my own inner longings, affirming that hope has the miraculous ability to emerge when least expected. Continued its ascension, my mind wandered back to the introspective hours following my near-death experience. I recalled the overwhelming sensation of unconditional love and the reassuring whisper that life's hardships were but fleeting chapters in the eternal narrative of our souls. Each spark of light I had seen during that surreal liminal phase had lent credence to the idea that within each of us lies an endless reserve of strength, waiting to be reignited. The white smoke was an external manifestation of this internal truth, a symbol that illuminated the possibility of renewal, even for a heart that had known profound sorrow. Strangers became silent confidants, united by the shared spectacle of this miraculous sign. I noticed subtle gestures, a soft touch on a shoulder, a quiet nod of the head, and tender smiles exchanged between individuals, for whom this moment was as transformative as it was historic. These unspoken interactions wove an intricate tapestry of collective healing, a spontaneous acknowledgement that while each journey is deeply personal, it is also interconnected with the communal pulse of humanity. In our shared gaze toward the rising plume, there was an unspoken promise that no one is truly alone in facing life's challenges. This ritual of white smoke, steeped in centuries of tradition, was a living testament to the belief that the divine continually communicates with us through signs and symbols. It instilled in every observer a renewed confidence that the future, even when cloaked in uncertainty, holds within it the seeds of potential transformation. For those of us who have traversed the realms of despair and emerged with insights born of struggle and enlightenment, the white smoke served as both validation and inspiration. It validated the struggles we endured, whispering that every tear shed, every moment of isolation, was leading us to an encounter with something greater than ourselves. Moments of that profound spectacle, I felt an overwhelming gratitude, not just for the renewal that the white smoke symbolized, but for all the twists and turns that had brought me to this point. The melding of ritual, history, and personal transformation converged in a sublime moment of clarity, a moment that seemed to answer the quiet, persistent questions that had echoed within me for years. It affirmed that even in times of overwhelming darkness, there is a guiding light, a spiritual force that awaits to usher in a period of rebirth and hope. Wisps of white smoke slowly dissolved into the expansive blue of the sky. They left behind a lingering feeling of serenity and promise. In that quiet aftermath, I knew that the symbol of renewal would persist as a beacon throughout my journey, a reminder that every challenge is accompanied by the potential for greatness, and every ending is just the prelude to a magnificent new beginning. The image of the smoke, etched into my memory, would forever serve as a touchstone for that timeless truth that life, ever ephemeral and ever enduring, gifts us the chance to rise anew, to embrace change, and to step forward with unyielding hope. Thus, the white smoke was not simply a transient spectacle, but a profound metaphor, a silent yet eloquent testament to the eternal cycle of transformation that defines our human experience. It breathed new life into ancient traditions, melding the sacred with the personal, and inviting all who witnessed it to believe in the continuity of hope. In those moments, I recognized that the divine was not distant, but rather intimately woven into every experience, ritual, and every heartbeat. The white smoke, ever ascending, was both a farewell to a past burdened by sorrow and a welcoming beacon for a future illuminated by the promise of endless beginnings. And in its radiant beauty, I found the strength to continue my own pilgrimage, a journey not just across physical landscapes, but deeper into the undiscovered corners of the human spirit. Standing amid the throng in St. Peter's Square, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation, a shared, silent promise of transformation that one could almost see shimmer in the cool morning air. Countless souls had gathered, their hearts and hopes converging in that sacred space, all awaiting the arrival of the new pope. I, too, felt the weight of the moment. Every step I took forward was imbued with a deep, personal significance, a culmination of my journey from the brink of death to the awakened expanses of my inner life, now leading me toward an encounter that would forever alter my path. He hummed with the soft sound of whispered prayers and gentle murmurings of awe. It seemed as if time itself had slowed, preparing for the emergence of a presence that was both timeless and achingly human. When, at last, the grand doors of the basilica opened and the new pope appeared on the balcony, an almost tangible hush fell over the crowd. He did not arrive with grand fanfare or ostentatious display. Rather, his presence radiated a calm authority and a warmth that drew every eye upward. In that serene instant, as he surveyed the gathered faithful, our gazes met. For a fleeting moment his eyes, gentle pools of compassion and quiet fortitude, seemed to acknowledge my own long-hidden struggles and triumphs. That intense look was a silent benediction. I felt deeply seen, as though all the years of turmoil and the tender moments of revelation had converged into this single transformative instance. There was something ineffably familiar about his expression, as if he carried within him the collective hope of all those who had ever dared to dream of redemption. His simple, genuine smile, unburdened by the weight of tradition or protocol, washed over me like a gentle tide, soothing old wounds with an unspoken promise of renewal. As the new pope raised his hands in blessing, his voice, soft and deliberate, resonated through the square. Every word he uttered was steeped in the timeless language of compassion and mercy. In that resonant moment, I felt the divine message I had received so many years ago, the message of hope and transformation, take on a vivid living form. It was as if his blessing was a confirmation that the cycle of endings and beginnings was not only real, but was being actively granted by a force far larger than any of us. Around me, the crowd reacted in unison, murmurs of gratitude, and smiles that lit up the cool morning air. In that collective consciousness, I sensed an invisible thread binding every individual, the shared understanding that lives are renewed, and from every hardship arises the seed of new light. The new pope, with his humble countenance and serene composure, was at once a symbol of that divine renewal and a living testament to the power of unyielding hope. In that moment, my mind wandered back to the dark hours following my near-death experience, a time when I had been adrift in a world of light and solace, yet grappling with the painful memories of mortality. I had come to understand that life is not a measure of years lived, but of the transformative encounters that shape our souls. And here, before me, was a living embodiment of that truth. The new pope's unpretentious manner and authentic presence seemed to whisper that everyone, regardless of the scars they bear or the battles they have fought, is worthy of divine grace. I recall how gentle, deliberate gestures, his slight bow of the head, the tender way he placed his hand over his heart, seemed to defy the usual pomp associated with his role. Instead, he exuded an aura of quiet introspection and deep empathy. In that gaze, I found reassurance that the sacred traditions of the Church could be reawakened through sincerity and simple acts of kindness. It was as if, through his presence, the centuries-old line between the earthly and the divine had blurred, merging my personal journey with that of an institution that had guided countless souls through the ages. Transfixed, my thoughts soared amid memories of earlier revelations, of luminous visions and sacred messages that had once felt so intangible yet had reshaped my inner landscape. Every face in the crowd appeared to be reflecting these same mysteries. Each person had their own private narrative of loss, renewal, and quiet triumph. In that vast mosaic of collective hope, the new pope's appearance was not just a momentary spectacle, it was the clarion call to embrace our shared human vulnerability and transform it into the power to heal. His presence was a reminder that true leadership is not wielded with authority or coercion, but is a gentle force that nurtures the light within every heart. For several long minutes, as he observed the congregation, the new pope's eyes communicated a depth of understanding that transcended words. In that silent communion, I felt as if he was inviting me, and all of us, to step beyond our individual limitations and forge a path toward a future defined by compassion and unity. His gaze, imbued with a serene wisdom, implicitly reassured us that, irrespective of our personal tribulations, we are all part of a time wherein every soul matters. And gradually the crowd began to disperse, but the echo of that encounter remained. I lingered there long after the official proceedings ended, allowing the memory of that profound moment to sink into the very core of my being. I replayed the image of his compassionate smile and the flicker of understanding in his eyes, feeling a wellspring of gratitude wash over me. It was as if he had etched a quiet promise onto my heart, that I was capable of embracing change, of rising above despair, and of kindling a light that could guide others even in the darkest of nights. Of that day, the humble way the new pope carried himself, his sincere words, and the collective murmur of hope from those gathered became a cherished part of my own living story. I realized then that this encounter was not an isolated event, but rather a transformative pulse in the continuum of my spiritual journey. The new pope's appearance reaffirmed the idea that renewal is a sacred right granted to us all, and that the divine chooses to reveal itself not in grand spectacles alone, but in the quiet, intimate moments where hearts connect. In the quiet that followed the ceremony, as I slowly began to walk away from the epicenter of that historic event, I felt a profound shift within me. The new pope had imparted, through every subtle gesture and every compassionate look, an enduring lesson on the power of human kindness and the relentless promise of hope. I carried within me an unspoken vow to let the light I had witnessed serve as a beacon for myself and for others, guiding us through even the most challenging chapters of our lives. That sacred encounter sparkled like a gem in the endless tapestry of my memories. Even now, when I reflect on that day, I am reminded of the extraordinary capacity we have to heal, transform, and to forge connections that transcend the boundaries of our individual lives. The new Pope's presence, gentle yet resolute, continues to resonate within me, a timeless whisper of faith that every encounter, no matter how fleeting, can birth an eternity of hope. In that powerful moment of communion, I learned that the form of leadership is rooted not in authority, but in vulnerability and in the willingness to share one's heart openly with the world. And so, I stepped forward into the future, a future illuminated by the gentle, enduring light of that divine encounter, ready to carry its message of renewal wherever my journey might lead. After the grand events of that historical day, as the fervor of the crowd subsided, and the echoes of ceremonial blessings still resonated in my heart, I found myself drawn to a state of quiet introspection. The bustling energy of the public had gradually given way to the gentle cadence of solitude. It was in these unaccompanied moments that I discovered a profound space for self-reflection, an inner sanctuary where the experiences of renewal, hope, and transformation could be revisited in silence and deep contemplation. I sought refuge on a modest stone bench tucked away in a secluded corner of St. Peter's Square. Here, far from the transient clamor of the masses, I allowed myself to sit quietly. Ancient architecture, softened by the golden glow of the afternoon light, provided a silent witness to my inner musings. I closed my eyes and listened to the distant murmur of receding footsteps, the murmurs of whispered prayers, and the gentle rustle of olive trees swaying in the mild breeze. My thoughts unfolded like a delicate tapestry woven from threads of memory and revelation. My mind inevitably wandered back to the extraordinary chapters of my life, the instance of near death, the luminous messages imparted in that ethereal space, the pilgrimage to the Vatican, and the sacred encounter with the new Pope. Each of these events had left an indelible mark on my soul, and it was in this quiet hour that I began to understand how they had collectively redefined my understanding of existence. I recalled my near-death experience, when time had seemed to suspend itself, allowing me a glimpse into an alternate realm suffused with radiant light. The sensation of leaving my corporeal self, if only for a moment, had been terrifying yet deeply awakening. In that fleeting dimension, I had encountered whispers of divine love that transcended human frailty, a loving call to embrace life fully in its myriad forms. Now, as I reflected on that encounter, I realized that those whispers had become the foundation of my renewed perspective. They resonated through every beat of my heart, urging me to cherish the present and to seek beauty and meaning in even the simplest moments. The memory of the white smoke rising in the azure sky also returned to me with vivid clarity. I recalled how its ethereal curls symbolized not only the ceremonial confirmation of a new chapter for the Church, but also the shedding of old disappointments and the welcoming of fresh beginnings. Each wisp had carried away remnants of my past misgivings, leaving behind an unspoken promise of purity and transformation. As I sat on that bench, I felt that same promise imbue me with quiet strength, reminding me that every ending, however painful, is invariably followed by the potential for rebirth. My contemplation then encounter with the new pope, a moment that had carried an almost ineffable grace. I remembered his gentle smile and the earnestness in his eyes, which spoke volumes of compassion and understanding. In that fleeting connection, I sensed that my inner journey and the timeless traditions of the Church were converging. The new Pope's presence had not only confirmed my personal narrative of transformation, but had also underscored the universality of hope. His unpretentious demeanor encouraged everyone present, regardless of their backgrounds or burdens, to embrace their inherent dignity and pursue paths of healing and renewal. I also acknowledged the myriad of other reflections that had silently accrued during my journey. I thought of the quiet moments I had shared with other pilgrims, brief exchanges that carried deep, unspoken layers of understanding. Each whispered conversation, though ephemeral, had reinforced my belief in the mutual bonds of human experience. There is something profoundly humbling in realizing that, amid the chaos of modern life, shared silence offers a space where individual souls can connect without words. The surrounding to echo my inner state, the soft play of light and shadow on the ancient stones of the square, the faint rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle wind, and even the rhythmic beating of my own heart, all merged into a powerful symphony of existence. In that symphony, I found reassurance. The world was both vast and intimately interconnected. Every sound, every quiet corner, and every ray of sunlight was a reminder that life, regardless of its trials, is a continuous unfolding of beauty and mystery. As slowly slipped by, I allowed myself to be enveloped by a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to witness both the grandeur of historic traditions and the subtle transformative moments of personal redemption. I recognized that these periods of quiet reflection were not escapes from reality, but essential parts of it, portraits of an inner life that thrives on introspection and mindful awareness. Solitude, I renewed my commitment to live with intentionality. I resolved to hold on to the lessons distilled from each experience and to let them shape a future defined by compassion, resilience, and hope. The silence that surrounded me was both a balm and a call, a quiet urging to align my daily actions with the deeper truths I had come to cherish. In the interlude, I learned that while the world's grand events might mark the passage of time, it is in our solitary moments of contemplation that we truly encounter the essence of our being. These moments of unsayable reflection allowed my soul to speak in whispers, imparting wisdom that resonated far beyond the noise of external rituals. And as I finally rose from the bench to rejoin the ebb and flow of day-to-day life, I carried with me a fortified spirit, a quiet assurance that even amidst life's transient chaos, the light of renewal forever endures. The recesses of my heart, the memory of that day continued to illuminate the path ahead, echoing the eternal truth that every moment of contemplation holds the potential to transform sorrow into hope and isolation into interconnected joy. As dusk settled over the city and the day's sacred celebrations faded into a gentle stillness, I felt that a profound transformation had taken root deep within me. My journey, from that surreal near-death experience to the luminous messages that thereafter unfolded, through the pilgrimage to the Vatican, and culminating in the tender, confirming encounter with the new Pope, had not reached an end, but rather had prepared me for a new beginning. In that quiet twilight, I understood that life was an ever-evolving tapestry in which every ending is intricately woven with a fresh start. Leaving the hallowed grounds of the Vatican behind, I set out on the long road home. Yet this return was not a step back into old routines. It was a march toward a future rich with hope and possibility. The ancient corridors and carved stone facades that had witnessed centuries of prayer and transformation now whispered to me of resilience, of rebirth nurtured by the enduring pulse of faith. Every footstep was a reaffirmation that the divine journey was ongoing, that the most significant changes occur not in the clamor of public ritual, but in the quiet persistence of everyday life. Followed, I savored the simplest of moments. Mornings arrived with a new glow, a soft luminescence filtering through the curtains, each ray a reminder that every sunrise brings with it the promise of renewal. I would sit by my window, coffee in hand, and reflect on the lessons learned. The painful struggles, the mystical revelations, the shared compassion in crowded squares, they never lost their meaning. Instead, they served as steadfast anchors for my spirit, a reminder that even in the most turbulent times, hope is a constant, ever-present force. By a commitment to live with intention, I began to incorporate practices that would nurture both my inner light and my connections with others. I took to long walks through the quiet city streets, inviting conversations with strangers who, like me, were searching. I discovered that the beauty of human connection lies in its shared vulnerability. In a simple smile exchanged with a passerby or a gentle word from an elderly neighbor, I saw reflections of the divine message that had rekindled my soul. These encounters, fleeting yet significant, reassured me that renewal is not just a solitary experience. It's a collective endeavor, a weaving together of countless stories into one luminous whole. Amidst this period of introspection, I turned to creative pursuits that had long lain dormant. I filled pages with poetry and sketches, each word and stroke a testament to the transformation I had undergone. There was a release in putting my innermost thoughts onto paper, a feeling of liberation that affirmed the notion that art is both a mirror of our inner worlds and a bridge to the lives of others. In these creative moments, I saw myself as part of a larger universal narrative, a mosaic of struggle, beauty, and inexhaustible renewal. Moments when memories of past fears or the echoes of that near-death night crept into my thoughts. But instead of succumbing to old anxieties, I now met these fleeting shadows with quiet resolve. I learned to see in them not a source of despair, but as reminders of the transformation that had made me stronger. The wisdom gleaned from my trials had become my silent mantra, a gentle, persistent inner voice urging me to move forward, step by step, into each new unfolding day. This new beginning extended beyond internal change. It soon rippled outward into my relationships and community. I began engaging more deeply with friends and acquaintances, sharing my insights and, in return, listening to their own stories of loss and trauma. In our vulnerable exchanges, I found a profound connection that transcended simple conversation, a shared recognition that every individual carries within them the power to rise from the ashes of their former selves. Together, we began to explore what it meant to live as bearers of hope, each of us a small but essential piece of a much larger, ever-changing mosaic. Volunteering in community projects and joining initiatives that aim to uplift those in need, I discovered that true renewal often blossoms through service. Every act of kindness, however small, became a reaffirmation of the core lesson etched into my soul, that renewal and transformation are gifts to be nurtured, shared, and multiplied. With each compassionate encounter, the old limits of my past seemed to dissolve further, and I came to understand more deeply that a new beginning is not an occasional event, it is a way of life, a continuous act of courage and generosity. As the seasons shifted and time gently marched onward, I sat on many evenings beneath a sky studded with stars, pondering the vast interconnection of all things. In that cosmic reflection, I recognized that my life was but one story among billions, each of us on our own pilgrimage toward our true selves. And yet there was an undeniable unity in our diverse paths, a shared, inexhaustible promise that every ending is only the prelude to a tapestry yet unspooled. On the threshold of this new chapter, I expanded my vision and embraced the uncertainty of what lay ahead with both humility and determination. I chose to see each challenge as an opportunity to create, each gap in understanding as space for growth. With each step forward, I carried the lessons of past chapters, pain, joy, and wisdom, transformed into a luminous beacon for not just myself, but for those whose lives might intersect with mine along the winding road of destiny. Deeper into the uncharted possibilities of a new dawn, I resolved to honor every whisper of hope, every echo of renewal that had touched me so deeply. I embraced the promise that living with purpose means being open to constant transformation, and that even in the silence of night, the light of our inner lives can guide us to a horizon brimming with promise. In the end, I understood that a new not defined by a single moment of revelation. It is the steady, persistent heartbeat of life, pulsing through every day, every breath, and every act of love. And with that understanding came the quiet assurance that the journey forward, though unpredictable, was paved with the eternal possibility of renewal.